should I start the live stream?
Okay, so I think we're going to get started, and we'll just have a little
Yes,
delay
please,
here
Terry.
until we get the webcast going.
Done. You're live.
Okay, are we live on the webcast?
You're live on the webcast.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome to our ad hoc economic recovery committee. I'm Sean Strickland, and we're having this meeting via Zoom to practice social distancing and make sure we're all as health and safety and safe as possible during the pandemic. So thanks everyone for attending, and I'll ask the clerk to kick the meeting off with a roll call.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sue Foxton.
Did she say me? I didn't hear her. We can't hear her.
Sorry. Sue Foxton.
Present.
Michael Harris. I understand he'll be joining us shortly. Councillor Jowett.
Here.
Councillor Kiefer.
Here.
Councillor Lawrence.
I'm here.
Regional Chair Karen Redmond.
Here.
Thank you. With the exception of Councillor Harris, everyone is present at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So the second item on the agenda is: are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. Approval of minutes from June 18th. So on the second page there, or the third page of our package, it was a preliminary identification of ideas, options to be explored. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit so we can establish those priorities and help give direction to staff going forward. Other than that, is there anything else from committee members around the minutes? Chair Redmond?
Thanks, Sean. And this probably isn't quite the right place, but can we talk about a little bit of public consultation at some point in time and add that to our work list?
Sure. Yep, no problem. Okay, anything else around the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'd like if Stevie or Leanne can put up on our screens the page from the minutes identifying the priorities we established as a committee last week. No, because I think we may want to amend them. We have to approve them. So let's just see. Okay. So preliminary identification of ideas, options to be explored. So I categorized them. They really fell into two buckets. Most of them were red tape. So the first two there were red tape, and then the third one was development charges. Then the next two were red tape, and then stage 2, phase 2 Cambridge LRT I classified as capital. Then the next two were red tape, and then red tape again with backlog of permits, and then capital budget. So it seems to me that the priorities we identified there are, the east side lands we're going to hear about today. Red tape, we're going to get that started off with today. Capital budget, development charges, and then the third area or additional area would be tax policy. So does that make sense in terms of our priorities then? Okay, so the red tape, capital projects, development charges, tax policy, east side lands. We're going to deal with east side lands and red tape. There may be more work that comes out of that from east side lands and red tape this morning. So then if we're in agreement with that, I would suggest that, as per Mr. Dyer's comments last week, that our additional priorities going forward would be capital budget, development charges, and tax policy. Does that make sense to members of the committee? Okay. All right. So those will be our priorities, those 5 areas that we've identified and I reiterated here today. So I'll just look to the clerk. You asked me earlier if we wanted to approve the minutes or not. So should we approve the minutes and then make this priority as part of this meeting's minutes? Okay. All right. So I need a motion to approve the minutes. Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Jowett. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. And then I'll need a motion, I think, to approve our priorities as listed. Councillor Kiefer, seconder, Councillor Lawrence. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. So then, Mr. Dyer, I'll just turn to Mr. Dyer because I just want to set this up going forward. So Craig, you know, from the finance area, we looked at capital budget, development charges, and tax policy. Is there any particular order that you would prefer to deal with those issues?
So in response, Mr. Chair, I would say we're entirely in the hands of the committee. So if you have a preferred, if there's one of those 3 that you'd like to get at first, then we're happy to do that. I think, you know, conceptually, I can envision the conversation on development charges and tax policy a little bit clearer than I can on the capital budget. So I think from a staff perspective, we'd be looking for maybe just a bit more guidance from committee as to what specifically you'd like to see on the capital budget. I think, you know, DCs and tax policy, we can easily show you what legislation allows, current practices that are in place, where you may have other discretion to do things. I think that can all come together fairly easily. Capital budget just seems a little bit more nebulous, I suppose, at this moment. So a little bit more guidance on that one, and an idea of which of those 3 you'd like to get at first would be extremely helpful.
Okay, so based on that, if the committee's in agreement, you know, the development charges and tax policy, maybe we'll start with those. Because in my mind as well, a lot of the capital projects have various funding sources, including development charges. So there's a relationship there. Sue, did I see your hand up? You're on mute.
Helen Jowett has her hand up on the screen. She's using the hand.
Oh yeah, it'd be ideal to use the hand, but I can't see it here. Helen's got her hand up apparently.
Thanks, Sue. Sorry about that, Sean. I won't. I'll use my physical hand now if that's easier for you.
Yeah.
So, Craig, when you speak of the capital projects, I think you're right. This is going to be probably a big one, a big bucket, I guess. Is there a way we could look at what's on the books in the next, maybe 5 years, or maybe 5 years, and maybe you think there's a better number, or the group does, and give it a scoring or a priority rating based on how it can influence jobs and homes? Like, I know that's oversimplification, but is that a way to start thinking about this?
Craig?
So through you, Mr. Chair. So, you know, we can certainly provide an overview of the capital program. I'm just thinking out loud a little bit here, but, you know, I could envision, you know, us bringing some information back on, you know, kind of a high level, you know, here's what our capital program looks like. I may suggest we focus maybe on the next 2 or 3 years as opposed to 5, but again, at the committee's discretion. We could show you, you know, we could talk about how, generally speaking, how the capital project is funded. We could show you the top, you know, 10, 15, 20, 25 projects in each of the upcoming years. You know, we haven't at this point done any kind of scoring or evaluation. But I think maybe seeing the list of what's in the capital program right now, you know, might be enough to spur on a little bit of discussion about what you might or might want to see. And the timing is pretty good, right? Because we're starting to do the update for the 2021 to 2030 capital program. Staff are going to be working on that over the summer. And if there are thoughts from this committee that would then make its way to council that might influence the timing of some of those projects, then this is a good time to have that conversation. So I guess my initial feedback would be, let's take a look at the list first and then try to figure out where to take it from there.
Sure.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Helen?
It does. It really does.
Okay. The only thing I would add, just to be clear, is I think it's important for us to get a context of the entire 10-year capital plan, and then we can focus in maybe on the next 2 to 3 years, because we want to get, whatever leverage we have or flexibility we have within that capital budget, we'd like to have that impact happen for recovery efforts if we're going to move some projects around. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And in there, I'm also wondering, from Carl, we talked about phase 2 of Cambridge LRT. Do we need, just wondering, Carl, and I see Sue, you got your hand up too, but Carl, I'm just wondering how you would see that discussion being facilitated vis-a-vis the capital plan.
Well, we need to get a better understanding, I guess, of where the progression or non-progression, and I mean, I have a fairly understanding, but I think we need a better understanding in terms of how that phase 2 thing is all going to evolve or can evolve, or what methods are there available so that we can, make sure that we have some sort of an activation program where we can get to a lot quicker than what the timetable is telling us. Nobody knew that the COVID thing was going to hit, but I think that's thrown an extra wrench into the phase 2 progression of the LRT phase 2 for Cambridge, and of course we keep getting told that we're speaking constantly with the provincial government, federal government per se, but maybe there's something that can be done to make it a faster approach on this thing. I'm not sure. I'm just rambling on here thinking out loud, but
Okay.
it's for sure sitting in an idle situation right now, which is understandable because of COVID, but I'm not satisfied that we're moving ahead as fast as we should be or could be, and I'm wondering if there are any ways to do that, to advance that.
So I could summarize then, you're looking for a quick update report on the status of phase 2 and what, if anything more, we could do as a council to advance the progress of getting it to construction.
I would say that's a basic understanding, yeah.
Okay. So could we work that into the capital budget discussion, Craig?
Yes, that should be no problem. And I think, there is, it's not my sense that the work on stage 2 has been slowed by the COVID-19 pandemic. We're working away on I think it's called the TPAP, the transportation version of the environmental assessment process that's underway right now. But we can certainly provide an update as to what the work plan for the rest of this year looks like. We can show you what we have in the capital program right now. And then the committee can, we can have a discussion about, what, if anything, we think we could do differently.
Okay, great. So,
sorry.
Go ahead, Carl. Yeah.
Sorry, Sean. Sorry. And is there a way that we could be getting a better understanding, or, and I know this is a tough one in terms of where the province and the feds are standing on in terms of actually wanting to give us monies for the phase 2 portion of this thing. I mean, what scares the hell out of me is that everything's gone quadruple in terms of pricing because of the COVID thing, and actual just time is money here. And so I know how proud we have been to be on budget, on target for the LRT and the KW side, but I'm worried for the Cambridge side.
Okay, thanks, Carl. So I got Sue, Jeff, and Karen.
Okay, all good conversation, but I thought our directive was to deal with helping businesses and getting things going through COVID-19. And the capital budget thing, I understand that and everything else. Isn't that sort of like all regional council information where we're supposed to find ways in 6 months to make it easier? Like Jeff's suggestion with about setting up teams to get ready so they can go and visit the restaurants and everything to get them opened up. Things like that, like short-term things we can do right away. This other conversation of capital budget, great, and looked at. But was that part of our objective? I misunderstood, then tell me.
Well, it was right in the motion for the formation of the committee at the capital budget, and the idea is, you know, what kind of levers we have as a regional council at our disposal to help stimulate and encourage recovery, and capital budget's a big component of it because we spend approximately $500 million a year on capital. So, you know, we have a look at that, and we could make a determination that maybe there's some projects that are larger, that are later, for example, in the budget we'd like to advance. LRT, for example, could be one of those projects where we could say, and I'm just kind of blue skying it, you know, we could say, okay, look, you know, we know the economic impacts of ION already to date. We'd like to see that same kind of development activity happen in phase 2. Maybe we decide as a committee we really want to emphasize, and there's more we can do to advance phase 2. I don't know until we get the update.
Okay, I understand that. I just don't want us to get too focused on things that I want to make things happen as soon as we can. That's what I'm trying to get.
I think we're all agreed on that, Sue. I think we're all agreed on that. Thanks, Councillor Lawrence. Jeff?
Thanks, Sean. And yeah, so when I raised this issue back at council, I mean, people kind of thought it's a little bit crazy, but you know what? The last provincial government offered Hamilton $1 billion. They didn't even ask for it to set up an LRT there. I mean, this provincial government pulled it back. So it's not like it's not possible. I think we've often talked about waiting to hear from governments. Then the announcement would be, well, do you have any shovel-ready projects on your books? That's what we're looking for. So to me, it makes an awful lot of sense. I mean, I think we need to have some way of jump-starting some of these major projects as well. And I think if the province is looking to doing something, they might want to look at a system that's already up and operating and something that you add to, as opposed to starting all over in some other municipality. I mean, I don't know. I think there's not that many LRTs in Ontario, even in Canada. So we've always said on the books that we wanted to proceed to phase 2. It's an important part of what we want to do. And I think having as close to already plans and having all of this background stuff done before any announcement happens, or when it does happen, we're ready. And that's kind of my thinking. And I agree, we are looking for short-term wins. But I think, you know, we always try to, at the region anyway, we try to look long-term on almost all of our planning. And this certainly is part of it. So I don't know what provincial or federal announcements are going to come out to try to stimulate the economy. But as Sean just mentioned, you know, we've done really well with phase 1. And if we can implement phase 2, I think that would certainly jumpstart the economy in all of our municipalities.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I got Karen, Chair Redmond, and then Craig.
Thanks, Sean. I just wanted to bring up 2 related points. I have a letter that I received from the Home Builders Association that's asking for some consultation. And I'm wondering if this committee would be the right committee to maybe hold an hour and a half Zoom meeting. I know this morning Dr. Wong and some of the enforcement people from public health did one with the business community, and it was really well received. I think there were about 66 businesses that were on that. So I just want to put that forward. The home builders are talking about cutting red tape. They're talking about wanting to continue to do stuff online, and it's very much what we've talked about as part of this response to recovery economically from COVID-19. So I just want to put that forward as I think that might be a really good innovation, and I think the home builders would be on, and we can ask them what would be helpful to them, whether it's DCs or it's cutting red tape, and really hear from them, not extensively, but at least an opportunity.
Karen, I'm wondering, we talked about this last week, and I think the letter from the home builders is, it's got good timing, because we did say, do we want to have public input? And certainly the home builders would be a stakeholder group that we would need to hear from on this. And I'm wondering if maybe as part of our agenda, we schedule a meeting in the next couple of weeks, and maybe it's a kind of quasi-public meeting, and we invite maybe the Chamber of Commerce and the home builders and maybe Communitech, the business organizations, to provide us some input into the committee. Would that be an idea worth pursuing, kind of like a public meeting to get?
I would suggest that exactly that, and I would say you do it as broadly. I mean, I've been on Zoom meetings with 400 people, and then people just use the chat function, and you have a moderator. But I think it might be a really good gesture, and more than a gesture, might be very substantive, because we'll hear from them what things could help them. And it's also an opportunity to tell them the planning that's online and the cooperation, some of the things that are happening they may not all know about. So I would think as broadly as that could be distributed, the better it would be.
Okay, so I'm seeing nodding heads there, so we're in agreement with that. So we'll figure out the timing, and we'll organize something connected to that. Mr. Dyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just going back to the stage 2 LRT for a second, we'll certainly put some information together on the project. I just wouldn't want committee members to be under the impression that this is going to make a good candidate stimulus project. There is I'd say a fair bit of work that would need to be done before a shovel could be in the ground. And what we're hearing from the federal government in particular right now is, okay, if and when money is announced, they're looking for projects that can be completed by the end of next year, right? So to me, stage 2 LRT fits into a different category, because of the overall magnitude of the project. It's never going to, that project will never fit into, an allocation-based stimulus program. It's just way too big. So we'll need to figure out a different way to get funding for that project. We can certainly show you some of the work that we've done so far in anticipation of some federal money being announced. And we have, I think, a long list of smaller projects that truly could be underway either this fall or next spring and completed in one construction season. And so from a stimulus perspective, that's what we're looking at. LRT, yes, we'll provide the information, but it's a different animal.
Yeah, I think we recognize that, and it's a different animal, and there's a lot of different components to it, Craig. So I think there's general council buy-in. So for example, there could be, I know the provincial government, for example, is open to unsolicited proposals for major infrastructure projects. The federal government's looking at a similar idea. So do we have a look at it, and do we possibly leverage the private sector to come on board and see what they could do to more quickly advance stage 2? I get it. It's a much more than more immediate economic hits through capital programs. But I think it's important to have a look at it, see where we're at, and if there's anything we can do, because the governments are also going to be responding in a post-COVID way, and they're doing it right now to expedite some of these approvals. And I think we want to make sure that we're as close to the front of that queue as we possibly can be. And I think I think we understand the nature of the size of the scope of this project for sure. So certainly, thanks for that. Councillor Jallett?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Strickland. I guess I'm absolutely behind us meeting with all these groups. I just wonder if we can really capture the essence of their key pieces of information if we combine them all together and try to do that in an hour. So I don't know. That's all I'm asking. Like I really think they have a lot of value to bring to the table, and I'd be concerned we wouldn't get it all if we tried to jam them all together and do it in an hour.
I think we'll have to be at least 2 hours, Helen. Have to be at least 2 hours.
Yeah, minimum. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Rod, you had your hand up.
Well, I was just simply going to mention that there is actually some ongoing consultation with the industry on a few fronts, and so some of this actually might be covered off in those other parallel processes that are already underway. So I can talk about that, some of that, a little bit later on in the meeting.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Carl. Saw your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I just want to piggyback a bit on Helen's concern there. I'm wondering too if it would have a better effect if we just met with, the home builders separate from, let's say, the chambers of commerce and what other groups. Unless you think it's for the sake of time that we need to have them all together. It might not have the same impact to have them all together. That's my concern there, but I'll go with whatever the committee wants to go with.
Okay, so I think we all recognize that having that input's important. We just need to figure out what's the best way to do that. And maybe it would be as simple as inviting a group at a time to provide their kind of general input to what we're doing. It'd be better to manage time that way as well. But I do think Chair Redmond was thinking of a more broader, kind of wider consultation process, more of a public meeting type format, which I also think has some merit. I would tend to fall down the side of a broader public meeting, just to get input from the community, the appropriate groups, and I also based on I alluded to this last night during some of our debates, is that all of us have different contexts in the community, and we hear from different people. And I think it's important for us to understand really what's happening in the ground with some of our business community, particularly our small businesses. And that, I think that's a critical piece that we need to have a little bit more understanding in terms of how much a lot of our businesses are struggling right now in COVID. And I've had calls from businesses who are asking for tax relief, asking for development charges relief. We're hearing from the federal and provincial governments, what are municipalities doing for us? So I think it's important for us and for all of council to hear a little bit more from our business community and the struggles that they're actually experiencing and what they're really afraid of going forward. So I would tend to come down the side of more of a public meeting like Chair Redmond suggested. So is that all right then if we go ahead with that and we just kind of set it up and make sure we put some confinement around it? Helen?
Thanks, Sean. I also wanted to add, would it be worthwhile having Martha George come in and speak to us too from the Construction Association? I'm not sure if she's been captured in any of the other groups.
Sure.
And then I think we have to also think about what kind of information do we want to harness. So if Rod's got some good information already, perhaps a meeting where Rod shares all of that high level so that we don't go reinventing the wheel. And then maybe the next layer to me is we almost have to be careful who we put in the same room, because sometimes they're talking about competitive information and they'll be reluctant to share some of their barriers with us if we're not sensitive to that.
Right. Okay. We have to be sensitive to that, but it's got to be a public meeting. It can't be a private meeting. And if they request a private meeting, we have to see how it complies with our procedural bylaw.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think that's a good discussion. We got a path forward on that. We'll have to figure out time. It's going to have to be within the next, couple of weeks, I would think. Maybe not next meeting, but maybe the meeting after, if that's agreeable to everyone. I think that'll give us some time to get it out there. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the next item on the agenda then is reviewing the draft terms of reference on page 6. Anyone have any comments? The only comment I had on the draft terms of reference, I think they're really good. I think clerks did a great job capturing what we discussed and the amendments we made. But on committee membership, the last sentence says the chair will be elected the first meeting of the committee. Any members of the regional council are permitted to attend and I would add attend and participate in meetings, but will not be voting members. So if our colleagues want to join us, they can participate, but they just won't have a vote. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? So that's the only amendment I had for the terms of reference. Does anyone else have anything they want to add in the terms of reference? Okay, so can we have a motion to approve those as amended? Councillor Jowett, Chair Redmond, all those in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, our first topic, the much heralded and long-time terminology around expediting government decision makings and red tape. So I'll turn over to Rod, and he can walk us through a couple of his presentations with respect to East Side lands and red tape. So whatever one you want to do first, Rod. Rod, you're on mute.
Apologies. Can you all see the presentation there that I've just shared?
Yep.
Okay, so the way that I'd organize this was I've got the update on the East Side lands first, but I can flip through to the middle of the presentation deck where we talk about the ongoing work regarding the development tracking system and streamlining our development approvals. Would you like to start there?
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So as I mentioned in our first meeting, the COVID-19 was a very interesting exercise. We went in 1 week to convert our development approvals process to an electronic file system, and whereas everybody was essentially working from home, that process, thanks to the brilliant work of our internal IT team, went almost completely seamlessly, and we actually didn't miss much more than a day or two of operations to make it all happen. The result is that we have, as I mentioned last meeting, kind of a DIY development, electronic development approvals process. So for the committee's information, we're currently working on a completely we're processing all of our planning work as we had previously. It's continuing to work through the standard process, but it is a little bit manual in the sense that files are being transferred electronically back and forth between planners, development, the private sector planners, the project proponents, and the area municipalities and our associated development partners like the GRCA. You know, in a bit of a mechanical way. The only difference being that it's all electronic, so it's faster. So the committee may be interested in, however, in the fact that we actually have just initiated the development of a business case for an integrated development tracking system for development applications in the region. There are actually, we have kind of paper and Excel tracking systems, and one or two true electronic tracking systems for development applications. But you know, each of our departments actually runs independent systems. So the question is, can we develop a fully integrated regional development tracking system that would accelerate, streamline the approvals process further? And so we hired a group well known for this work, the Perry Group. We've just started a series of conversations about that. They've started their interviews of stakeholders, and we will be consulting with the industry and the area municipal partners as part of this exercise as well. The objective is to build a fully integrated, or to evaluate the feasibility first of and the business case for a fully integrated development tracking system, and then set the stage for a conversation with council about how to proceed in this fashion. So I think this should give the committee some confidence that we are working pretty hard at trying to make sure that we've got a streamlined approval process here at the region of Waterloo.
Okay, thanks, Rod. Councillor Kiefer?
Yeah, Rod, thanks for that. I'm interested in this this Perry Group with their tracking system. Have you got any idea, Rod, how much time could be saved? And the second question on that one is an approximation of maybe dollars that could be saved. It sounds like a good system to me, but I'm not sure if you have a handle on those questions or not.
Well, I'd say that the work has just begun. We are already seeing some savings of time by just the simple fact that we're not using the mail to transfer files any longer, right? So it's difficult to, I don't have the numbers in front of me in terms of how much time is being saved, but this work by the Perry Group is designed specifically to figure that out.
Okay, and the other thing that is a question that I had is, as I was listening to you, is can we what kind of determination of accuracy can we get? You know, because you know how we run into the developers and the outside people from that we deal with, and they go to the he said, she said, and to get away from that and come in with a accuracy of the situation rather than be repetitive 100 times with what's happening.
Yep. Oh, I totally hear what you're saying. The thing about a tracking, development tracking system is this current time information on who's touched what files and where they are in the evaluation process. So, and I actually met with the consulting team this morning, and one of the things that we talked about was the design of a dashboard which would give us current information on where we are with the development industry at any given point in time. So I think that's one of the things that we want to fix as part of this process.
And thanks for that, Rod. And one more question. Do you have any examples of municipalities where the Perry Group has been used or not?
They talked about a couple of cases. They'd been working out in the West Coast, Abbotsford and Nanaimo. This is an area where I have limited expertise, but I'm happy to bring some more information forward from our planning team.
Thanks, Rod.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Helen?
And just quickly, Rod, how can we help you get this to a faster, like I'm seeing an October timeline here, and you heard our group wanted to sort of expedite things a little quicker if that was possible. And I think council, if they could see the benefits of this, or if you could help us understand how we could shorten the timeline on that, because this is a red tape reducer, and so it's, yep, to me, this is one of the best things you can bring to us at this time. So what can we do to help this be brought to the market sooner rather than later? Because I mean, you heard, I'm physically going to GRCA, pulling out a permit because it's stopping jobs. Like, and there's got to be a better way, right?
Absolutely. Well, so how about this? Why don't I go back to the planning team? As I mentioned, talked with them about the high-level principles of the project this morning. Why don't we go back to them and go take a look at the timeline for this project? I suspect that the October timeline is really organized around the final reports to council on this project. It may be possible to squeeze it somewhat. So let me go back to my team and come back with further information on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Thanks, Rod. Rod, just got a couple questions. Maybe we can go back to that slide again.
Okay.
So is this mostly internal? Are you talking about an integration with external as well, because each of the cities has their own system, GRCA, there's the hydro authorities, school boards, like there's a lot of different actors who get into this development approval process. And in my mind, if we were able to put something together that's an integrated approach across all of those approval bodies within the region, that would be the ideal.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Right now, the scope of our current project is to design a system that works for the region of Waterloo. However, we are meeting with all of the area municipalities and all of the development partners as part of this process. And if it's at all possible, we are going to design this so that it dovetails all these systems together. But I think that's there are a few additional complexities to get to that larger objective. For one thing, even amongst the area municipalities, not all of them have the same development tracking system, and some of them have very different processes or needs than the others, right? So I think this is going to be a really good opportunity to do a survey and understand all of the kind of the universe of those individual systems, and then have a conversation about how to knit them together if it's at all possible. Certainly, it will be much more streamlined and easy to transfer files between agencies if we do this correctly.
Okay, so that would be the kind of Holy Grail, is a fully integrated system, and I understand that's going to take some time. I guess a couple of comments is that before we decide on a system for the region that we think we would be able to extrapolate to the rest of the approval bodies across the region of Waterloo and the municipalities. So I think it's important for us to get buy-in to the system, because sometimes, we could put a system into place, but then one or two of the other actors within the approval process say, we don't want to participate with that system, and then you end up basically just with a system internally and not one that can be shared across multiple platforms. So I think that's important, Ron. I don't know if that's part of your thinking as well.
Yeah, so maybe what I'll do is I'll just flip over to the next slide, Chair Strickland.
Okay.
This is a product. This is an ongoing conversation with all of our area municipal partners as well. Michelle Sergi, our Director of Community Planning, is actually meeting with the planning heads from all of the area municipalities on a weekly basis. They have a joint Lean Six Sigma project underway right now, in which they're looking at how to streamline the development approvals process across all of the municipalities. So this is front of mind for our colleagues in the cities and the townships as well, and I think we do actually have a chance of making some real progress integrating these systems. And however, I would just qualify that by saying, there's a significant investment in existing information technology, which is not necessarily that compatible amongst all of the municipalities, right? So the Holy Grail, as you say, which is really attractive as an idea, is potentially quite expensive to achieve, and it would involve organizational change across the system. So.
Okay, so let's follow up on that, and then I know Helen wants to get in. So I recognize that complexity, and that is a challenge. But there's a couple of things related to that I'm wondering about in terms of key performance indicators. Presumably, the region and the cities, et cetera, track how long it takes from application to approval. And so they track, so I have to get a sense of what that timing is like. So I don't know, Rod, if there could be a flow chart and showing, development application and where it goes to different bodies, how long it takes to get from application through to approval. Because you hear this a lot from the business community. And in this case, particularly post-COVID, if we have development applications and we have investors who have the money to bring forward the development, I think we need to find a way really quickly to make that approval process quicker than what it currently is now. So what I would suggest is, well, I think this Lean Six Sigma is great. Maybe there's an opportunity with the support of the other municipalities to start a pilot project with a, call it what you want, quick access development charge or development approvals, quick access team, or development approvals emergency response team, or some kind of pilot project that we can put in place with representatives from each of the municipalities who, when that application comes in, they're on it and they're working together and collaboratively as they possibly can. Like a dedicated pilot project to expedite development approvals given the amount of activity we need post-COVID. So I'd be interested to hear your idea to that, Rod. Then I know Helen and Carl want to get in.
Yep. I'll have the conversation with Michelle Sergi and bring forward a bit of a description of our metrics as they currently stand, and this concept, because she's currently having those conversations with area municipalities. I think we'll be able to bring back some information for you that'll be helpful.
Okay, great. All right. I can't remember who I saw first, Helen or Carl. So
probably Helen.
I think Carl's acquiesced the floor to you, Helen. So
thank you. Don't be so cheeky, Carl. So first of all, Rod, what did you say, Barry or Perry Group?
Perry.
P.
Barry with a B, like our colleague.
P.
Peter.
P. Okay. Yeah. And then the other thing I was gonna ask is, this is where we in government, and I'm not trying to sound like a tool here, but in government we get kind of behind things because we find the barriers and they kind of slow us down. And I can see why you're looking at October. But what if we could just give one user app to each of the other tier municipalities, and we could already see measured success, if that's the fastest way to get this to market, rather than try to find a pilot project, and I still think that's a good idea if it's possible. But to me, it's like, we're not going to get perfection by October, because I think it's maybe too big a beast, Rod. And you know this more than I do when you're trying to advocate on streamlining two-tier systems into something that's seamless. So to me, I'm thinking, what if we could just do, one user app in each of the other municipality offices, so that sometimes it needs that for people to see the real benefits of something. And I'm just suggesting it because that's what came to my head.
Yeah. Well, I would say that right now, what we're seeing is files being processed and transferred and dealt with as, and if what I'm hearing is correct, it's people are moving as quickly as they can right now on all the major files. So the electronic transfers are actually helping out that process quite a bit. I think this, as we were talking about, the design of a fully integrated system is a bit of a beast, because it means that all of these individual systems inside of our partner organizations can talk to each other effectively. And, I'm no expert in information technology, but I'm guessing that that's not an entirely straightforward exercise. But certainly, the concept of expediting high priority files, I think that's something we can work on together.
I like the sound of that. expediting high priority files. I think that's a great way to characterize it. Councillor Kiefer, Carl?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I like I like your suggestion of the pilot project, and you know, I think coupled with what Helen just said, I think we're heading in the right direction on this thing. What I wanted to say to Rod, you know, in my 22 years as a ward councillor, and now my last 6 as a regional councillor, over the years, the one thing that has always annoyed me and has been an issue, and I think you probably realize it too, is that forever and ever, you know, when there's situations, the city blames the region blames the city, and there's this ping pong effect of you know, information going back. So having said that, I mean, if this kind of thing and through a pilot project or whatever, you know, can clarify that, or specifically come to, you know, a better scenario of dealing with these things, you know, so that we can, you know, be more expeditious, as Sean said, and as Ellen said, I would like that. But, you know, that's the one thing that's been, you know, and I'm not alone in that. I know there's other councillors that have stated frustration with, you know, the ping pong effect. Well, the region says we can't do this because of this. Then you go back to the region. The region says, well, wait a minute, you know, this hasn't been cleared with the city, or the city says this, and it's just a ping pong effect, I call it.
Yeah, I would say that yeah, since I've been here, and I know this is the case with Michelle Sergi, she has made it a real priority to build solid working relationships with our area municipal colleagues. We're on a basis where, you know, if there's a hiccup on a file, someone picks up a telephone and has a chat really quickly. So I can assure you that the communications with area municipalities is a really important priority for us. It has been from you know, for the last several years, and you know, hopefully it's working a lot better for the development industry. We certainly feel that it's working really well on our end, and we sense that there's good cooperation amongst all of the planners on both sides of at both levels of local government here.
Rod, I appreciate that, but I think if, you know, something like this, you know, this peer group can bring forth, you know, their concept, and I think that it'll go a long way in terms of not just, you know, regional staff or municipal staff having to pick up the phone and clarify something. Well, there it is. It's on the, you know, it's right on the tracking system here, and this is, you know, and the facts are there, and the science is there, and there's no ifs, buts, or maybes, and there still will be. I get it. There still will be situations where, you know, staff have to intercede, but it's I appreciate your comments. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Stu, Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. I've been trying to get a process like this for probably the last 8 years. I asked somebody, why is everybody, why is it so easy to open business there? And I was told by somebody down there that when a business comes in with an idea or plan, a staff person is assigned that person, that business or whatever. The business is given the checklist. The staff person's responsibility is walk through that thing and get it done expediently. Every single thing. And Mexico moves their stuff through like crazy. And I thought, we can do that. It's not that complicated. Maybe we have to divide the files into categories, you know, and the simple ones, like you said, Sean, what did you say? The high profile ones are something that maybe we need to expedite them or move them to I think we could do it with all of them. You could categorize them, and staff members that have the fast and easy files, and then the more detailed files need more experienced staff, and all of them work on the same checklist and get it done. We have the handoff to so many agencies and different people that one file, no one knows at sometimes where it is. I will get contacted by a developer and say, what's going on? Because they'll say, the planner says the township has it, the township says the region has it, the region says the planner has it. And the person, and so I'm calling all three and saying, where is this? I need to know now, get it done. Shouldn't happen. Everybody should know exactly where the file is at that moment and what needs to be done to move it to its next stage. And that's what we're asking for. To me, we've made something really complicated out of something that sounds like it could be pretty simplistic. Or maybe I'm just simplistic.
No, not at all, Sue. I think you're you're right on there, and I think that you know, as Carl mentioned, this is something that many of us have been aware of for a number of years, and I like Rod's description of it in terms of an expedited approval process for high priority projects. So what I'm thinking is, because I'm conscious of time, we want to talk about East Side Lands. I'm hearing two action items here. The one is on the integrated approach that Perry is working on for us, and if there's anything we can do to advance that in terms of you know, getting that resolved or some approvals prior to October. So we'll get some more information back on that. And then the other thing I'm wondering in terms of an action item is I'm hearing a consensus emerge around this expedited approval process. I don't know if it'd be a pilot project or whatever it would be, but that's something we'll get some more information back with regard from Michelle, I think Rod referred to, in terms of an update on this Six Sigma. And maybe we're coming up with a recommendation around forming a expedited approval process. I don't know if you call it a task force across all municipalities with designated leads in each organization to expedite projects. You know, I'll let staff figure that out. But I think that from my perspective, that's something that we could recommend fairly quickly with staff support to strike that kind of group to make sure these development approvals occur a more timely fashion, particularly considering that we're going to need that development revenue. Does that make sense then in terms of the action items? So we'll get an update on Perry. We can expedite that. We'll also get an update on the Six Sigma and what we can do to make a recommendation around forming an expedited approval process. All right, Sue?
Not to be a jerk or anything, but I find we form committees after committees after committees, and 10 years down the road, we've still made no progress. I think we could really make this happen. And if we do strike the committee, I think we should give them a time period. You've got like 6 months to get this done, or 8 months, because we just drag things out forever.
Sue, my idea is not to form a committee. My idea would be for the municipalities and the region and GRCA to get together and say, okay, we're going to form an internal group who's going to stick handle and expedite these development applications that are designated as high priority when they come through.
Perfect.
So the KPI is that, say it takes, I don't know, say it takes 100 days from application to approval and building permit right now. The KPI is what can we reduce that by? Can we reduce that by 50 days? Can we reduce it by half? Can we reduce it by 3/4? So that we're really going to focus on those high priority projects and decrease the time from application to approval to construction. So yeah, it's not so thanks for that. No, not another committee. Helen?
Thanks, Sean. Like, that's exactly what my take on it. And if we can engage Nancy Davey sort of earlier rather than later, Rod, because I literally have been physically going and pulling permits, and it's not their fault. As COVID came in, we've had stuff sitting there since last November. Yep. That's now coming forward and causing, and I've had like at least a half a dozen really important ones that we've like, and they're quick to do it because they understand the delay and the construction season timing and all that. So yeah, if we could get Nancy in there earlier rather than later, they're looking for the same benefit right now. Like so much. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so Rod, I just want to make sure you're clear on the direction that we're giving around these couple of issues.
Yeah, I think we've got some good direction. I'll get additional information on both of these items and have a conversation with Michelle regarding what this expedited approvals process for high priority projects might look like. And then we'll come back to the next meeting for that conversation. I would say that this is actually happening in real time on a variety of levels right now. Council had asked us to work with the area municipalities to expedite patio approvals, and just like to confirm with you that that committee is actually working very quickly. They've designed a region-wide protocol that's accelerated patio approvals for the hospitality industry. They're now turning around patio applications in between 1 and 5 days. So it's really a dramatic. In the first week, they approved 35 patio expansions onto publicly owned properties adjacent to businesses. So, and in the hospitality industry, as you know, that's one of the most hard hit industries in our economy, right? So, by COVID-19, and I think you're going to see immediate results from that in terms of the vitality of some of these businesses.
The exact same report, the exact same approach, and I was really emboldened by the local government's ability to quickly turn this around. And like you said, the approval processes are like in 1 to 5 days. Fairly more simplistic than larger development applications, but it's the exact same thinking that we see here. We want to have applied to these larger high priority projects.
So do you want to go to the East Side lands now?
Yeah, I think so. Are we good with the red tape discussion, folks? All right. Yes, please do, Rod. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to flip up to the front of this presentation deck. Yes, Helen had asked for an update on the East Side lands. We're working right now on a day-by-day basis to get the registration of the Phase 1A2, which is the first stage of the development of the intermarket lands down at the bottom of Freeport Creek there. So we're expecting that registration to take place in the next week. So just this slide basically describes where we are with all those approvals. The draft plan of subdivision is in the works now for the next set for Phase 2 and for Phase 3. And I've got a map which illustrates where these phases are coming up here. So phase 1 is the Boychuk Drive development down at the bottom of the map here, if you can see it there. Phase 2 is outlined in orange on the bottom of Intermarket Road, and there's a pumping station under development in between these two phases. And then Phase 3 is the Hoop Lands north of Allendale Road. So these projects are very close to being completed in terms of the approvals process. I know that the City of Cambridge and our planning team are working very closely together. This is the largest expansion of employment lands in the region in recent memory. And I will just provide a brief update on the infrastructure as well. So Intermarket Road, which is largely being built on Phase 2 lands, the tender has been issued. It will close in July. They hope to have construction starting in early August. Allendale Road is they're intending to post the tender for that in July as well, with construction towards a little bit later in August commencing. The CP rail crossing is in the design phase right now, and the City of Cambridge and the developer are working together to get that tender ready for early next year. Yeah, you as a council approved a report yesterday, which allows for that Boychuk Drive to be connected to King Street in Kitchener, and because the City of Kitchener didn't have an interest in that one particular stub of land, it doesn't have, or road which doesn't have any servicing for land in Kitchener. The region has played a role in taking that over and designating that as a regional road for the purposes of servicing and ownership. I would also say that the sanitary trunk, which will serve the entire east side lands, is actually constructed between Allendale Road, so under the phase 2 section of Intermarket Drive. I'll just go back to that. So that's the sanitary trunk is now constructed through that orange block, and that allows for the road to be constructed starting later this summer. The force main, which is running up from the pumping station along Boychuk Drive up to Maple Grove, is actually completed, with the exception of one small section which is going to be used to tie into the pumping station. And the pumping station is actually under construction now as well. So this is a very active development site. The work underway right now will create approximately 170 acres of development ready land where developers can start construction as early as beginning of next year. It's a top priority for both the City of Cambridge and for the region at this stage.
Okay, thanks very much, Rod, for that update. Do we have any questions from members of committee? Okay, so I don't see any questions. Rod, I'm wondering if you go back to the slide about the tenders.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, these are tenders that are being issued by the City of Cambridge?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So is there any reason, like I know July is only 2 weeks away now, so is this first one, is that open? Is that open already, the Intermarket Road?
My understanding is that it is. Yeah, it closes in July, so it'll be open.
It closes in July, so it's open right now.
Yeah.
And then the next one, they're aiming to post it in early July.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering why it couldn't be posted like right now, June 15th.
Well, that document, I'm actually not totally current on where the City of Cambridge is on that preparation of those tender documents. I suspect they will issue those tenders as soon as the documents are ready. I know that they're highly motivated to do that, so they want to make sure they capture this construction season, and so I believe I would be surprised if they weren't working as quickly as they could on those documents.
Okay, and can you also remind me, like what was your reference to the sewer main? What needs to happen there?
Okay, so I'll go back to the map. So there's a pumping station down at the bottom of Freeport Creek here, in between phase 1 and phase 2 of the developments. The sanitary force main that is leading from the pumping station to the existing sanitary trunk on Maple Grove is actually constructed already. The only thing that needs to be done there is it needs to be connected to the pumping station, which is actually under construction in this area here.
Okay.
And the sanitary trunk, which is that large, it's one of the most massive sanitary trunks in the region, and it's already constructed to feed into that station. It's constructed from Allendale Road down to the pumping station itself. So basically, the pumping station is the missing piece in that puzzle. It's under construction now.
Okay. All right. So, is there anything we can do to expedite this development, or in your view, it's well underway? There's really no roadblocks. It's moving ahead as quickly as it possibly can.
As far as I know right now, the land registry, the subdivision registrations are pending in the next few days. The construction is actually underway. All of the players are highly motivated to complete these projects, and there aren't any approval processes right now that are at a standstill.
Okay, that's good. All right, any other questions from committee members in Eastside Lands? Good. All right, well, thanks very much for that update, and we're looking forward to this continuing. It's been a long time in the making, but it sounds like there's some real momentum there now, so that bodes well.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thanks, Rod. The only other item on their agenda was other business, and that was I had on there the Waterloo Region Home Builders letter, and I'm wondering if anyone wants to raise comments to that. I think just the letter that I read was similar to our conversation around red tape and how we can advance some of these files and get some of these approvals done a little more quickly. So I think we addressed that in our conversation, and if we're going to have a public meeting in a couple of weeks and hear from the home builders, I'm sure they'll reiterate that, and we'll be much better briefed on what we're doing internally across the region to deal with their concerns. So is there any comments anyone wants to make on that under other business? Helen?
So Rod, when I was reading the letter, I could see that they were talking about ongoing open line of public communication engagement remains an integral part of an active, accessible, but transparent government. So do you feel like we have given them a strong enough or close enough pipeline to staff to be able to address things? Like, is there any kind of, are they content? I'm not hearing anything about real tangible improvements. I'm just hearing sort of general comments. Is there anything that you're kind of gleaming from it that sounds specific that could use our support to kind of promote it?
Well, I can tell you we have a very close working relationship with the Waterloo Region Home Builders Association.
It seems so, yeah.
Yeah, no, they're on all of our committees, our stakeholder committees. I met with several of them as part of the steering committee or the stakeholder committee for the regional official plan amendment. I know Craig has actually met with the president of the association regarding development charges and the provincial changes to the Development Charge Act some time ago. So I think that we're in actually a pretty good spot in terms of that relationship. They have a pick up the phone relationship with Michelle Sergi on processes, and so whenever we're running into hiccups, we know about it pretty quickly. So we feel like we've got a pretty good handle on that. The other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, we will be meeting with them as part of the Perry work, the work of the Perry group on the development tracking system. So I think we're not in bad shape on this front.
So they'll be even happier, right, Rod? So this is a bit of a good news thing, other than the fact that if we implement the changes we're already talking about, they'll just be even more happy with us, eh?
Well, I think the important message for the home builders is that we take the efficient administration of public policy seriously, and we don't want to have files sitting around unnecessarily. That we're working with them hard to make sure our processes are working properly.
And do you find because of COVID that I know we're all doing a lot more Zooming, but do you feel like there's some real potential to really engage more with them because of maybe using Zoom more with staff and with them, and even perpetuating an even better relationship? Well,
you know what? It's a really interesting point, because the cost of these meetings is dramatically lower than it used to be, right? Where everybody had to travel. You'd waste 30 minutes each way or 40 minutes each way for some of our clients. So my impression is that the steering, the stakeholder committees that we've got going. I think we had 15 or 16 stakeholders on the last call on the regional official plan stakeholder meeting. This is actually facilitating our dialogue quite well. It's a bit of an art form. It's a different skill set, as you know. Zoom meetings are different from face-to-face meetings. There's some pros and cons, and we're learning how to do this. So I think in certain circumstances it's going to help us quite a bit.
I'm glad to hear that, because I really think that Carl and I are going to harass Greg now, because he used to always say he had to give up a half day for a meeting whenever there was anything going on regionally. No, and that's absolutely, it's no longer the case. We now just have to get on Zoom. And you're right, there's different nuances to the information, but I'm hopeful that we can get more people around the right tables now when the travel time is alleviated, when we can. So yeah, thanks. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Councillor Fox and Sue.
Yeah, just Tom and Rod, you said, they just get on the phone. That's part of the problem. So if you see a planner's desk, at least a lot of the planners I know, there's files and so many files on their desk. They get on the phone, they talk to somebody, they may jot it down, it gets lost in the file, or it gets not jotted down at all because somebody else comes in and talks to them about another file, and then something comes in over here and something. I need there to be a policy that if they take a phone call or anything, that everything is backed up by an email. So they have the direct information and confirmation from both sides. The phone call, that's where a lot of the problems come. That's where a lot of things fall down, because there's so many things on their desk, so many things on the go, and that phone connection is not a real record, and the memory isn't as great because there's so many things to remember. So I have a problem with the phone call thing.
Well, I think that's therein lies the reason for pursuing a development tracking system that that everybody can rely on, right?
Okay. I don't see anything else under other business. I don't see anyone else raising any other issues. Mr. Dyer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just thinking back to the conversation at the start of the meeting about some of the finance items, could I suggest a sequence and get some feedback from the committee just in terms of the order that we might go at them? And I was going to suggest tax policy at your next meeting on July the 9th, followed by capital budget, followed by development charges. And I suggest that, for a couple of reasons. One is, I think the conversation with the home builders and the business community, for lack of a better term, would be helpful to have in advance of the conversation on development charges in particular. And so if that sequence works for people, then we would bring forward that information over successive meetings, I'm guessing in July and into the early part of August. Does that work for the committee?
I see everyone nodding their head. So just to put a finer point on it then, next week we would deal with a couple follow-up items from this discussion around red tape today.
Do we have a meeting next week, Mr. Chair?
We'll have your report on tax policy next week. Craig?
So I didn't think we had a meeting next week. I had July 9th as the next meeting.
Oh, sorry. July 9th? Right, okay. So July 9th in the next meeting.
Okay.
So you're suggesting tax policy?
Yep.
Okay.
Tax policy on July the 9th, yes.
All right. And then the following meeting, do we establish a meeting after that? We don't have a date yet. So what's the following Thursday after that? The 16th? So do we want to do the public meeting on July 16th? Does that work for everybody? Okay, so July 9th, tax policy, reducing red tape. And then July 16th, we'll have a public meeting. Sue?
I have a 3 o'clock meeting on the 16th, so if we could do it and be done by 3 or move it to the morning, because I have a 3 to 5 meeting on the 16th.
Yeah.
I have a 10 o'clock housing and homeless steering meeting at 10 a.m. on the 16th.
So if we started at 1, could we be done by 3?
Yeah, I'll make sure we're done by 3.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. So we got the next 2 meetings planned then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. So July 9th, and I'm just repeating it for the benefit of the clerk. So July 9th, and the agenda will be follow up on red tape and tax policy from Mr. Dyer. And Craig, that report will include what's currently in place with respect to tax deferrals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And then the following week, July 16th, 1 till 3, will be our public meeting that we'll have to discuss how we want to organize that.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
All right. So those are the next 2 meetings for the committee. All right. So is there any other business to come before the committee today? Sorry, I was advancing it. Somehow I was thinking next week was July 9th, but so I didn't want to lose a week in July. Like, who wants to do that? Okay, we're good?
Yeah.
All right, good discussion again today, folks. Thanks very much. Thanks to staff for your participation. We'll talk to you again soon. Sure. All right, take care.
Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Yeah, we'll see you later.
Carl?
Later.
Bye, everyone.
Carl.
Alligator.
Clerk has a question for you.
Oh, wait a minute.
Can you do the doodle poll that I sent